Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Doing life with God. Let me begin by stating something fundamental, yet often overlooked in our frantic modern lives. Life is profoundly difficult. It's chaotic, unpredictable, and often downright terrifying. Yet, in the face of this uncertainty, we are tasked with constructing order, meaning, and direction. The question is, how do we do this? The idea of doing life with God is not merely a theological assertion, it's a profound psychological and philosophical framework. To truly do life with God is to accept a responsibility so immense that it transforms you. It means you must contend not just with the external chaos of the world, but with the internal chaos of your own soul. Life is chaotic and difficult. This is not a matter of speculation. It's a reality that every individual must confront sooner or later. From the moment we become aware of our existence, we are thrust into a world of complexity, unpredictability, and suffering. Relationships falter, careers collapse, health deteriorates, and loved ones are lost. These are not exceptions to the rule of life. They are the rule. Yet amidst this chaos, we are tasked with the seemingly impossible, to make sense of it, to find meaning, and to create order where none naturally exists. There is a chaos in this context is not just the random and unpredictable events that occur around us. It is also the disarray within us, the confusion, fears, doubts, and conflicts that plague our minds. It's the part of us that wants to avoid responsibility, that seeks comfort over growth, that clings to resentment rather than forgiveness. Chaos, in all its forms, threatens to consume us unless we find a way to counterbalance it. This is where the need for a framework of order and meaning becomes evident. Without structure, we are left vulnerable to the overwhelming nature of chaos. A life devoid of purpose is like a ship adrift at sea, at the mercy of every wave and wind. To withstand the storms of life, we need a compass, something that guides us, stabilizes us, and gives us direction. Order, however, is not something we stumble upon accidentally. It must be actively constructed. To create order in a chaotic world, we have to establish principles, routines, and values that anchor us. This requires effort, discipline, and above all, a clear sense of purpose. But constructing order is not just about external systems or rigid rules. It's also about internal alignment. It's about organizing your thoughts, emotions, and actions so that they are in harmony with the deeper truths you aspire to live by. Meaning, on the other hand, is what sustains us through the challenges of life. It is not something handed to us. It must be sought and discovered. Meaning emerges when we take on responsibility, when we strive for something greater than ourselves, and when we confront chaos with courage and resolve. It is what allows us to endure suffering without succumbing to despair. The interplay between chaos, order, and meaning is what defines the human condition. Too much chaos, and we are paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. Too much rigid order, and we become stagnant and lifeless. The key is to navigate the balance between these forces, allowing meaning to emerge as we engage in this dynamic struggle. Meaning that seems to be binding our world more tightly together, and that seems to be making us surrender to the world even more difficult as the political struggle turns to the dynamic struggle. This process is not easy. It requires us to face our own inadequacies, to confront the harsh realities of existence, and to take on the burdens of responsibility. But it is through this process that we grow, that we find purpose, and that we begin to understand what it truly means to live. God represents the highest conceivable good, a transcendent ideal to strive toward. To grasp the significance of this idea, we must first understand what it means to conceive of an ideal at all. An ideal is something that exists as a beacon on the horizon, a guiding star that pulls us forward. It embodies what we could become if we acted with complete alignment to our values, potential, and highest aspirations. Mig? The idea of God as the ultimate good transcends individual interpretations, specific doctrines, or cultural variations. It is not bound to any single narrative, but points to something universal, a representation of order, truth, justice, love, and meaning in their purest forms. This ideal serves as a target, one that is perpetually out of reach, but essential for guiding our lives. Without an ideal, we risk becoming aimless, directionless, and unmoored in the face of life's complexities and challenges. Human beings depend on logical thinking to get through the world, to sort things out. When we orient ourselves toward the highest conceivable good, we acknowledge that there is something greater than our immediate desires, fears, or self-interest. This orientation demands humility because it forces us to recognize our limitations. It reminds us that as individuals, we are fallible and finite. Yet in striving for this transcendent ideal, we tap into something infinite, something that lifts us beyond the constraints of our individual existence. God as a concept unites the dual realities of being. On the one hand, it acknowledges the sacredness of the world as it is, with all its beauty, complexity, and order. On the other hand, it challenges us to confront the imperfections of the world and of ourselves. In doing so, it pushes us toward growth, transformation, and the relentless pursuit of what is better. This dynamic tension between who we are and who we could be is the essence of striving toward an ideal. The pursuit of God, or the highest good, is not merely an abstract or philosophical exercise. It is deeply practical, influencing the choices we make, the values we uphold, and the way we treat others. It requires us to act in accordance with truth, even when doing so is uncomfortable. It calls us to seek justice, even when it demands sacrifice. It compels us to love, even when love is met with resistance or indifference. These are not trivial demands, but they are the demands of a life lived in alignment with something greater than oneself. In striving toward the highest good, we also confront the profound question of meaning. If God represents the ultimate ideal, then aligning ourselves with God means participating in the creation and discovery of meaning in our lives. It means recognizing that every choice, every action, and every moment carries significance when viewed through the lens of a transcendent purpose. This recognition does not eliminate suffering or chaos, but it provides a framework within which they can be endured, understood, and even transcended. What precisely is lost when climate change? Observers would have to consider. Is it the whole history of human creativity itself? This pursuit, though noble, is not without its challenges. To orient one's life toward the highest good requires vigilance, effort, and an unyielding commitment to growth. It is a path that continually exposes our flaws and compels us to confront them, not out of despair, but out of hope for what we might become. It demands that we act as though what we do matters, because it does. Responsibility is the gateway to meaning and purpose in life. This might seem like a counterintuitive or burdensome idea, particularly in a world that often prioritizes comfort, convenience, and personal freedom. Many would argue that meaning should be sought in pleasure, success, or self-fulfillment. However, when we look at the great questions of life and the complexities of human existence, we realize that it is the assumption of responsibility that truly grounds us. Responsibility forces us to confront the world as it is, chaotic, unjust, and filled with suffering, and yet it also provides the opportunity to act in ways that transcend these challenges and elevate us to a higher purpose. When we take on responsibility, we are acknowledging that our actions matter. This is a deeply transformative realization because it means that we are not passive observers of life waiting for things to happen to us. We are active participants in the shaping of our own destiny and the shaping of the world around us. In a world that can often seem indifferent or even hostile, this is a powerful act. It is not just about the practical tasks we take on in daily life, work, family, obligations. It is about the mental and emotional commitment to engage with life in a way that upholds values, prioritizes growth, and seeks truth, even in the most difficult of circumstances. Responsibility also brings clarity and direction. In a world that is rife with choices, distractions, and competing narratives, responsibility forces us to narrow our focus and make decisions based on something deeper than mere impulse or self-interest. It calls us to act in a way that is congruent with our highest ideals, whether that be to protect and care for others, to contribute to the betterment of society, or to pursue knowledge and truth. You can imagine this act of making choices based on responsibility gives our lives structure and meaning because it ties our actions to something greater than ourselves. It aligns us with a purpose that is worth striving for and that gives us a reason to persist even in times of adversity. Responsibility is a source of resilience. Life's inevitable suffering and hardship cannot be avoided, but when we shoulder responsibility, we are also strengthening our capacity to endure these challenges. A life without responsibility is a life without a purpose to anchor us during times of trial. In contrast, when we are committed to something meaningful, whether that be a family, a cause, or a mission, we can endure hardship and continue forward because we recognize that the struggle itself is part of something greater. We grow through our struggles because responsibility demands that we face our fears, our weaknesses, and our imperfections. Intelligence then takes us further because it serves to prepare us for hardship and help us to succeed. We learn to confront our limitations and rise above them, not because we are perfect, but because we are willing to take on the challenge of becoming better. This understanding of responsibility as a gateway to meaning also transforms the way we view the world. Instead of seeing it as something we need to escape from or avoid, we begin to see it as a space in which we are called to contribute, to make a difference, and to leave a lasting impact. Responsibility takes us beyond the individual, calling us to consider the well-being of others and to recognize that we are all interconnected. It is only through responsibility that we can create the kind of world that we truly want to live in, one built on cooperation, care, and mutual respect. Confronting chaos, both external and internal, requires truth, courage, and discipline. Life is inherently chaotic. This is not just an abstract philosophical idea. It's a truth that plays out in the very fabric of our existence. On the external level, we face unpredictable events, societal pressures, economic instability, and natural disasters. On the internal level, we confront our own emotional turmoil, psychological struggles, and the contradictions that define the human condition. It is not enough to simply acknowledge this chaos to truly navigate life. We must engage with it directly and confront it head-on. This engagement is not for the faint of heart. It requires us to confront not only the external forces that threaten to overwhelm us, but also the internal forces that hinder our ability to act with clarity and purpose. At the heart of confronting chaos is truth. Truth is not merely an abstract concept or something that is subjective to each individual's perception. It is a principle that reveals the world as it truly is, devoid of illusion or self-deception. To confront chaos, we must be willing to face the truth about ourselves and the world around us. This means acknowledging the suffering in the world, recognizing our own flaws and limitations, and accepting that we do not have control over all aspects of our lives. Truth, in this context, is not something that is always comforting or easy to embrace, but it is the foundation upon which any meaningful life must be built. Without truth, we are lost wandering in a world that we cannot understand. Courage is the second essential element in this confrontation. It takes courage to face the truth, especially when it is uncomfortable or painful. Courage is the willingness to act in the face of fear, to pursue what is right even when it is difficult, and to continue moving forward despite the uncertainty that surrounds us. The courageous person does not ignore the chaos but steps directly into it, understanding that there is no growth without struggle. Whether it is standing up for what we believe in, confronting our own demons, or taking responsibility for the messiness of life, courage enables us to meet the challenges head-on. It is the antidote to fear and paralysis, pushing us to take action even when the path is unclear. Discipline is the third pillar in confronting chaos. Discipline is the ability to maintain focus and consistency in the face of distractions and difficulties. It requires us to stick to our values and goals even when the world around us is pulling us in different directions. Chaos, by its very nature, disrupts our routines and plans, often leading us to abandon our commitments and succumb to short-term gratification or avoidance. Discipline, however, is what allows us to resist these temptations and remain steadfast in our pursuit of what is meaningful. It is the ability to keep moving forward even when the external world seems to be in turmoil or when our own inner world is filled with doubt and confusion. Without discipline, we are at the mercy of the chaos, unable to take the necessary actions to bring about order and meaning in our lives. Together, truth, courage, and discipline form the foundation for confronting chaos. They enable us to meet the world as it is, without flinching, and to take responsibility for our lives in ways that bring about transformation. It is through this engagement with the world, this direct confrontation with both external and internal chaos, that we create the conditions necessary for meaning to emerge. Without these qualities, chaos remains an unmanageable force that overwhelms us. But with them, we not only survive, but thrive, growing stronger and more capable with each challenge we face. Sacrifice is essential for growth and transformation. It is a concept that has existed throughout history, embedded in various religious, philosophical, and cultural traditions. At its core, sacrifice involves giving up something of value in order to gain something greater. This can take many forms, whether it's sacrificing time, comfort, material wealth, or personal desires for a higher purpose. The idea of sacrifice is often misunderstood, especially in a society that prizes individualism and instant gratification. In the context of personal development, sacrifice is an inevitable part of the process. No meaningful change can occur without first letting go of old habits, outdated beliefs, and limiting behaviors. If we are to grow and evolve into the best versions of ourselves, we must first recognize that we cannot hold on to everything. The comfort of the familiar, the habits that keep us complacent, and the desires that perpetuate our selfishness must be sacrificed in order to embrace something more challenging, more demanding, and ultimately more rewarding. This is where growth occurs, not in the easy, comfortable spaces, but in the difficult, uncomfortable places where we are forced to confront our weaknesses and make the necessary sacrifices to transcend them. Sacrifice is also a cornerstone of meaningful relationships. To truly connect with others, we must be willing to put their needs above our own at times. This requires a sacrifice of our ego, of our desire to always be right, to always have our way, or to always put our own desires first. Relationships, whether familial, romantic, or professional, are built on mutual sacrifice. We give of ourselves, not because we have to, but because we choose to. Recognize the deeper fulfillment we gain from meaningful connections far outweighs the short-term gratification of selfishness. The sacrifices we make for others are not only an investment in the relationship itself, but also in our own growth as compassionate, empathetic individuals. Sacrifice is intimately tied to purpose. A life without purpose is a life without direction, and in the absence of direction, it is difficult to see the value in making sacrifices. Sacrifice becomes meaningful only when it is aligned with a greater goal, something beyond the self. Whether it is for the well-being of others, the pursuit of knowledge, or the achievement of a larger vision, sacrifice helps us stay focused on the bigger picture. When we are committed to a purpose, the sacrifices we make along the way feel not like burdens, but like necessary steps on a journey towards something far greater than ourselves. It is this sense of purpose that makes the act of sacrifice not only bearable, but empowering. Sacrifice is transformative because it changes us at a fundamental level. Each act of sacrifice, whether small or large, forces us to confront our attachments and priorities, and in doing so, it reshapes who we are. As we release what is less important, we make space for what is more meaningful. This continual process of letting go, of making sacrifices, is what enables us to evolve into individuals who are capable of experiencing deeper levels of fulfillment, connection, and achievement. Through sacrifice, we transcend the limitations of our former selves and become more aligned with the person we are meant to be. Walking with God aligns your life with truth, goodness, and transcendent purpose. This alignment is not a passive process. It requires an active commitment to integrating divine principles into the way we live, think, and interact with the world. In a world that often encourages self-centeredness and instant gratification, walking with God calls us to transcend these impulses and orient ourselves towards something greater than our individual desires. When we walk with God, we align ourselves with truth. Truth, in this context, is not just factual correctness, it is a deeper understanding of reality that transcends the superficial and points us toward the essential. It requires us to examine our assumptions, challenge our biases, and confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world around us. The pursuit of truth is demanding as it forces us to abandon falsehoods, convenience, and deception in favor of what is real, even when it is difficult to accept. Yet it is in this pursuit of truth that we find freedom, the freedom to live authentically, to make decisions based on what is true rather than what is expedient or desirable. Alongside truth, walking with God also aligns us with goodness. Goodness is not merely an abstract ideal, it is a set of moral and ethical principles that guide our behavior and decisions. It is the practice of treating others with compassion, acting with integrity, and striving to create a better world for all. In a world where moral relativism often reigns, walking with God provides a clear standard for what is good. This is not about rigid dogmatism or imposing a set of rules on others, but about striving to live in a way that reflects the highest moral ideals. To walk with God is to acknowledge that the choices we make have consequences, and those consequences ripple out into the world, affecting not just ourselves, but everyone around us. This awareness calls us to act with greater responsibility, always seeking to do good, even when the path is not easy. Transcendent purpose is the third pillar of walking with God. Purpose is what gives our lives meaning, a sense of direction that helps us navigate through life's inevitable suffering and challenges. Without purpose, we are adrift, pulled by the tides of circumstance, unable to find grounding or stability. Walking with God offers us a higher purpose, one that connects us to something greater than ourselves. This purpose is not tied to personal success, accumulation of wealth, or superficial achievements, but to the pursuit of what is eternal: love, justice, truth, and the well-being of others. It is a purpose that transcends the individual and calls us to contribute to the larger fabric of humanity, to be a part of something bigger than our immediate concerns. To align with this transcendent purpose, we must embrace responsibility. Purpose demands action, and action demands responsibility. We must take responsibility for the choices we make, the impact we have on others, and the legacy we leave behind. Walking with God means walking with an awareness that our lives matter, that our actions are significant, and that what we do has the potential to create positive change in the world. This awareness of purpose elevates the ordinary to the extraordinary, making each moment, each decision, and each interaction an opportunity to live out a higher calling. In walking with God, we find that life becomes not just a series of random events or isolated moments, but a journey with meaning, direction, and significance. The clarity that comes from truth, the integrity that comes from goodness, and the fulfillment that comes from transcendent purpose create a life worth living, a life that is aligned with the highest ideals and the deepest sources of meaning. Thanks for watching.